Good morning and welcome everybody to day 2 of MediWales Connects online, the NHS collaboration conference delivered by MediWales. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I assume that last night wasn't quite such a challenge as it would have been if we were meeting live and had spent the evening in the bar networking hard until the early hours. So bit of a shame we didn't have that opportunity, but definitely feel better for it this morning. We've got a packed schedule today, so I hope you've got a copy of the programme. If you haven't, we will put a link to the programme in the chat that you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen during this morning's session. And you'll also find updates and bits of information on our Connects Twitter channel, which is at MW Connects. You're very welcome to use that as and tag us on comments and thoughts and reflections on the day. It would be great to see a little bit of interaction through Twitter throughout the day, given that we're not in the same room. Yesterday was excellent. It was really nice to see those comments. And we also encourage you to use the chat function on Zoom. It can be a little bit challenging for speakers to be presenting and really in a room on their own, talking to a wall, talking to a laptop, and really to get that feeling that they are actually in a room talking to a group of peers, experts and observers. So if you can use the chat, then feel free to introduce yourself. It doesn't have to be a question. It doesn't have to be relevant to the specific topic. But if you're in the room and you'd like to introduce yourself, then great. This is a collaboration conference. And so the more connections, the better. If you want to put in a web link to your organization, your program, your project, then absolutely welcome to do so. Please use the chat as much as you like. If you want a slightly more focused one-to-one conversation, then everybody who's registered for Connects has been included in on our Meeting Mojo platform, which is our partnering platform that we're using for this week's events. That'll be open all week. You log into Meeting Mojo, you get to put your profile down and you get to look at other people's profiles and request one-to-one meetings. Over the course of the week, those meetings will be scheduled and you'll be able to log in to have one-to-one, face-to-face, online meetings with people who you've requested. So it's a great system. I really do encourage you to have a look. It does require you to do a little bit of effort in the first place to log on and put some kind of profile on there, but it's well worth the effort. Also, if today we're just packed with case studies and examples and conversations and expertise around life sciences, in particular the NHS in Wales, and collaboration with industry and academia. If you would like to see and read more about industry, academic and NHS collaboration and successful projects that have gone to either improving patient care or reducing healthcare costs, then we will also put a link to our magazine Life Stories, which came out last winter, but is still very relevant, very up to date. I think one of my colleagues has just put that in the chat. So have a look at Life Stories and you will see dozens of examples of great collaborative case studies of Welsh health and life science sector. So lots to look at, lots to see, lots of meetings, but let's focus on the presentations as well. So we're opening today's session. It's a brief session and it's a case study example brought to us by Luzerne and GX Design. Great session if you are involved or want to be involved in a product development, manufacturing, prototyping, design, and you'd like to see how it's done by the experts. You'd like to pick up top tips, maybe even pick up a few pointers as to where things have been more challenging. So it's a brief session and it's really going to be very valuable for anybody who wants to know anything about product development. And then at 11 o'clock, we've got the Anara and Bevan team taking the lead on value-based procurement. So value-based procurement part of the value-based healthcare spectrum of activities, very current at the moment, especially with the need for product procurement in the NHS to deliver value as well as cost reduction. And those values might be as broad as reducing carbon or increasing resilience or delivering economic impact to Wales, as well as delivering value to the NHS along the chain, along the treatment pathway, and ideally and essentially delivering value to the patients that are involved in that process. And then at 1 o'clock, we've got adopt and spread. So we've got design, then we've got procurement, and then we've got adopt and spread. So it's almost like we designed it this way, and there is a bit of a process and a theme to today, which I'm guessing is going to be all about innovation and adoption, and then adoption at scale. And then at the end there, we've got a session, an expert session, really valuable session. We've got regulation, and this is being brought to you by a range of experts, both from NHS and from industry. And really, again, if you want to have a look at what regulation is all about, complying with regulation, if you're in the new product development process, or if you want to be, and you need to make sure your products are regulatory compliant so that you can enter the market, then this really is the session for you, being led by Andrew Davidson, who's a time-served industry expert in new product development and in manufacturing, in healthcare, and we've got Pete Phillips from SMTL in that session as well, who very much was and is part of the process of ensuring regulatory compliance around the COVID pandemic and the PPE requirements that hit the news for such a long time during last year. So some great reflections, some great stories, and some great advice throughout the day. So we start, and so I just check that my colleagues are ready and waiting, and I've got Jerome and Mark Hemlich. So Jerome from Luzerne Scientific. Jerome, are you there? And I've got Mark talking at the moment. So Mark.
Good morning, I'm here.
Morning, I'm here as well.
Excellent, we've got both of you. So I think the ideal format for today is you've both got presentations. Jerome's got a PowerPoint presentation, and then Mark, you've got a film, haven't you?
Yeah.
So if we run through those two, and then if we've got time towards the end, which I think we will do, then it's probably an opportunity to have a bit of a Q&A. And maybe ask some questions through the chat function or the Q&A function, but we'll just have a chat and pick up on a few of the points that you raised during your presentations as well. Does that work for you, chaps?
Yep, that's fine.
Right, in that case, Jerome, would you like to run your slides, or are you hoping that Izzy's going to run your slides?
I was hoping that Izzy was going to run my...
In that case, I think Izzy is ready and waiting. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave you to it.
Well, thanks. So this talk is about, a really exciting collaborative project between GX, the NHS, and our new startup company, Luzerne Scientific. And we started around this time last year when the pandemic, really hit us, and we had this idea to produce a rapid and high-performance COVID-19 test. So, with my colleagues Emma Hayhurst and Ali Rula, we've been working at the University of South Wales to work on urinary tract infections, and we had this idea to translate this diagnostic test into a COVID-19 test. I mean, it's a long story. Obviously, we've been working on this for a year now, but we are on the cusp of CE validation. And what we have now is the test, which is basically a swab that we designed ourselves, the assay, which is a lamp-based molecular assay, and an electronic reader device, which has been designed by GX. The idea is that we we have a very non-invasive swab, and we get to the result, which is the COVID-19 status, whether you're positive or negative, in 30 minutes. It is truly point of care. I mean, the machine that you see on the side, it's fits in the palm of your hand. It's portable, so it runs on 12 volt. So, for example, I've been running it in the back of the car at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital, and it's very sensitive and specific. We'll get to the figures later, and also the way that we designed, which the targets, the molecular targets of the virus, we are very confident that it can detect the COVID-19 variants that are known to date. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so the nasal swab, which is called the abdominal anterior nasal swab, it's a very easy, non-invasive swab. So it's just in the nostril, made out of polypropylene, and it's being produced by UPG in Mountain Ash. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. The assay itself is based on LAMP, which is a PCR type of reaction. So you use specific primers to bind to specific targets of the genome that you're trying to detect. And we are detecting 2 SARS-CoV-2 targets in each reaction. Together with our partners Biomont, they are producing assays, and they are aliquoted in individual tubes. So the idea is that the user can take a swab, and it will be placed directly into a pre-aliquoted tube and into the reader. Can I have the next slide? So the reader device, named Lodestar DX, has been designed by GX, and we were really excited by this. We came to GX with the basic idea, basically telling them what we would like to do, and together, this machine, this beautiful machine, is the result of that. It is a platform technology, so depending on what kind of assay we add in there, we can run LAMP reactions, right? So COVID-19 is only one application at the moment. We are working on the UTI again, so urinary tract infections, and we're hoping to bring many other assays on the market. So this is now passed its safety test, so it will be CE marked in the next week, basically. It also has Bluetooth connectivity, so it can talk to an app that's been developed by GX. So the user can also see the run itself, the data coming from that. But the device in itself is a standalone device, so you don't need an app. So all the clinical decision is made in a device by our own proprietary algorithm that will determine whether a reaction is positive or negative. So we've worked a lot on this. We've tested in the field, and like I said, it runs on 12 volt. Can I have the next slide, please? So the performance evaluation we've done, and again, we spent a lot of time with our clinical partners in the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Health Board, and although the population that we tested out truly point of care is quite limited, if we do it on point of care, we find 100% sensitivity, okay, and a 97% specificity. What we found is when in a larger cohort of samples, and especially when you store the swabs, we'll see a decrease of sensitivity, which is what you expect because you've got a degradation of your samples. Like I said, when we do this truly point of care, the sensitivity is it's very similar to PCR, so very high. So we are very close to CE marking of the whole diagnostic test as well, and well, we hope to bring it to market in the next few weeks. Okay, so I think that's it for me. I don't know, Mark, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I suppose from our perspective, the interesting thing about the whole project was, and I'm sure MediWales will be happy about this, I met Jerome at a MediWales event in November 2019, and we discussed the idea of the device in regard of the UTI assay they were developing. Of course, once COVID hit in the beginning of 2020, Jerome got back in touch because they were switching the assay development to COVID. We started the project mid-May. The Welsh government helped out. I think it's always worth saying they put in some serious funding into the project. We started developing. We produced 2 original test bed machines that went out to the Jerome and his team for testing. We fed back some information. We built 20. Axiom Manufacturing Services got involved in the production of the PCBAs. All the hardware and software development was done at GX with input on the algorithm from Jerome, Ali, and Emma. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind project, starting in May, and final validation, CE marking of the device completed last week. So it's been a great project to be involved in from start to finish. And like I said, without the Welsh government, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it quite as quickly, because obviously funding's a big hole in most projects. So I think that's it, really. I think you covered most of the development side of it.
No, that's right. I think I mean the funding and the support from the Welsh government has been really important to start us off, and the speed where it was available in the beginning helped as well, definitely.
Yeah, it was a completely different climate working with Welsh government than what we're normally used to, I suppose. The fact that, like you said, they were turning decisions around very, very quickly, very helpful. We've had some great support from the individuals in the Welsh government and getting sign off quite quickly. So it certainly helped speed up the development process.
Definitely.
So thank you very much for that, Jerome and Mark. A great introduction. That's the case study example for this morning's session. Mark, just before we go into a bit of Q&A and a bit of discussion, you've got a very slick video to introduce GX to the room, haven't you? So shall we run VT?
Systems engineering, product design and value engineering company. We offer a complete in-house design service from initial concept through to low volume manufacture.
We can offer mechanical design, electronic design, software, optics. The great thing about GX is that the clients come to us with an idea. It's very rarely a well-defined idea, not a full written specification, but just the nub of an idea. Very, very quickly, we can work out the best way of taking that idea forward.
GX Group's formed from 3 separate companies: GX Design Engineers, which is a product design consultancy; GX Environmental, which provides services to the utility industry; and GX Systems, which provides panel building, electrical installation, automation and control systems for the likes of South Steel, British Airways. Learning from one industry and passing that knowledge on to another industry has served GX and our customers really well over the last 20 years.
We work with lone inventors, entrepreneurs and large corporations across all sectors. Complex projects are the norm for us. We get excited by them.
It's nothing better than actually building something and actually seeing things working. And at the end of a project, seeing, your product coming down the production line in tens or hundreds or even thousands of. So that's the real buzz.
Thank you very much for that, Izzy. It is a very slick video. I know Zoom makes every effort to try and stop things looking slick, but if you want to have a look at that online, we'll pass you the link to that video as well, and obviously the GX website, so you can find out more information. So Jerome, could I start with a couple of questions to you, and
Sure.
And could I say, so presumably, where did it all start? At some point, you found yourself at a MediWales event, and presumably you didn't have the product development or manufacturing facilities or expertise in house, and you needed, but you did have an idea, you had a product, and you had some research. Would that be right?
I wouldn't say we had a product at that point even. Of course, I mean, we started from a university, and although, the University of South Wales, we're doing a lot of applied research, we were trying to make a difference. I mean, we're working on the urinary tract infection as a response to the longitude price, which is set up by Nasal to reduce the use of antibiotics, and we knew that we had something that was working, but of course it's a big step of sitting in a lab and having something that works. So it is it's the connection in MediWales and listening to to speakers there and making the connection with GX that actually is so important to start that conversation and bridging applied research to development.
And so Mark, you met Jerome.
Yeah.
And, so where do you start when you meet somebody who's obviously got some considerable, I should say, expertise in the research side, but doesn't have the expertise in house to do the product manufacturing. So where do you start? What questions do you ask?
I suppose first off is what I mean. They were using a technology already to run the assays, but the piece of kit was a lab-placed piece of equipment that cost £25,000. So that was never going to be a realistic point of care tool. So we had a bit of a conversation. They, in fairness to Jeroen and his team, they had built a little prototype. It was a little MDF box with a heater and some LEDs, a little bit of electronics inside it. Kind of typical of the sort of device that we'll quite often see someone will build, almost a little desktop demonstrator put together, fully working. It achieved what was required. It proved that the assay could be used and read successfully. But what they obviously needed was something that could be taken to be a CE mark product and put on the market. So we basically got a spec together, what the test length needed to be, what the temperatures needed to be. Understanding a price point is always important. That if the current device they were using was costing £25,000, what was the cost requirements for the device? It needed to be probably sub £500 production costs, which we eventually comfortably met, which was a great achievement. And then we've got to sort of concentrate on trying to make sure that the heater element was probably one of the key components to try and control the temperature of a block of aluminium to within 1 degree. Is over a 30-minute period was quite a challenge. And you always come across things that you've done quite well, but it catches you out later. So we had an interesting point where, as Jeroen mentioned, he was running his unit in the car. If you left it in the car overnight, it wouldn't run because the temperature dropped below 0, and the circuitry wouldn't allow it to start. And because the block was well insulated, it would take 3 or 4 hours back in room temperature before the heater block got to a temperature where the machine would start. So you find little things that you've done really well, but you've done them so well they catch you out in other ways. So it's about understanding what I'll say, Jeroen, as a client, what our clients want from an early point. I think if you tend to run off and get ahead of yourself and ahead of start thinking for yourselves too much, perhaps you can lose track of what the client needs. So it's really important to get that documentation done at an early stage, so everyone knows what it is you're trying to achieve, and then trying to make sure that you can produce the machine at a price point that's going to work in the market.
So that's an interesting point, and one I wanted to pick up with Jerome. So Mark asked for he presumably asked for cost targets, vitally important when it comes to doing the product engineering, to know what cost targets you've got to hit, and presumably volumes as well. He probably needed to know exactly, at least in a ballpark, a factor of 10. What are you looking for? Tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? So how did you come up with those figures as part of the brief?
I mean, that was, well, first of all, the cost target, like Mark was saying, is that, you know, machines that can do the job exist, but they cost £25,000. So the whole point for our work was to take the technology out of the lab and bring it into the community or into point of care. And also because we were still having the idea of the longitude price in mind. So to make a global impact, you need to produce something that is accessible for more people. So that's where we had it. I mean, the figure for us for production costs would be as low as possible, but of course, you know, you've got components that will cost certain amounts. But we try to keep it simple. Basically, that was the idea, to make a robust technology simple that will do the job very well. And the other point is the volume, and that's actually connected to the components as well. I mean, you'll remember when the pandemic hit, there were huge problems with supply chains, and there still are, you know, in the world, in both plastics, electronics, enzymes, all these things. So we wanted to produce a machine that was using standard electronics as much as possible, that you know, that are readily available, so that we can scale up quickly as well.
So that's really interesting. So you've got flexibility there. You've got the ability to produce in lower volumes, but then to scale up. Now, in terms of production and supply chain, you've listed a stellar list of Welsh manufacturing. You've become a bit of a poster child for sourcing locally, which has become a significant part of the resilience agenda for moving forward. And as you've already just mentioned, the fact that that global supply chains have become increasingly challenging to work with. So let me just see if I can list them, and you tell me if I miss any out. But UPG for swabs, Biomond for assays, GX were doing the app development as well as the product design and development, and presumably the prototyping, Mark?
Yes, yeah, with Drumlord in Cwmcan.
Excellent, a good shout for Drumlord there, and then Axiom, who presumably were doing the circuit boards, the electronics. Yeah,
and JC Mouldings did the injection molding tools for the first production units.
So a really a case study example of how you can get these products developed in Wales and use Welsh expertise.
Can I also mention the NHS and together with Tom Powell in the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Health Board, with their innovation hub, they helped us with the prototyping of the swab, which was done in their 3D printing facilities. So that was another iterative process that we tried many different things. They printed a lot of these swabs up for us, and that eventually led them to the injection mold swab that's now produced by UPG.
Excellent, and yeah, I'm more than happy to give a plug for our NHS innovation teams, and Tom is an example of one of our innovation leads who takes a real interest in manufacturing. So really glad to see how that's working. So you've got a list of suppliers. You go from prototype volumes through to mass manufacturing now, existing list of suppliers. Mark, presumably, I mean, yeah, you know the likes of UPG and Axiom quite well, but that you haven't developed those relationships just for this project, have you? You've those are relationships that you've had for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean we've discussed a number of products and projects with UPG, and we've got a couple coming up now that we're discussing with them. I'm trying to remember. I know Neil's on the chat, and you'll probably tell me off if I've forgotten something. I think we've only done maybe 1 or 2 things with UPG over the years, because what tends to happen with most of our developments is that the client goes off and selects the manufacturer. We've certainly done a few jobs that have gone through Axiom. We know Dave Davis and the team up there really well. They've placed work our way. We've sent manufacturing their way in the past. And Drumlord, who, I mean, we've worked with Drumlord for as long as we've been going, 35 years. Rob and Chris McCarthy and Alison at Drumlord, we work with every month for 35 years. I don't think a month goes by when we're not working with them. So they're one of the few industrial model makers left in Wales. If you ever need something rapid prototyped or built or VAT castings, you can't go wrong going to them.
I'm not sure they're in the chat, but
yeah, no. It's just really important that relationship for us has been key to a lot of our success over the years. Having really someone local, yeah, that can turn things around in a speedy time and do such a professional job is really important.
So we've got the science, we've got the clinical, we've got the innovation leads in the NHS ready to engage, and we've got the manufacturers, the suppliers for prototyping and for. But I'm sure everybody wants to know also. You did mention it, Mark, on the Welsh Government funding. Would you? I realise that some things about that might be confidential, but is there anything you'd like to share with us just in terms of the process of sourcing funding, and if people have got projects, where should they start?
So under normal circumstances, it's the biggest hole in product development by a country mile. We should also mention Kiwa, who did the assessment work. It used to be Blackwood EMC, but they're now called Kiwa. Strange enough, in Blackwood, who did the compliance testing for us, also in Wales. See, so funding is, I don't know, it's such a difficult gap to fill. Obviously, you've got the Development Bank of Wales who are willing to put in money and equity, but obviously that can be quite a long-winded process, and there's obviously fees to be paid. We were a bit lucky on this, that basically that most of the funding, if not all of the funding, came from Welsh Government in the form of grants through the COVID resilience funding. So that made this project particularly easy, I suppose, in terms of funding. It's still, a fair bit of paperwork to fill in, but in comparison to the normal run of projects, we get a lot of companies try for Innovate UK funding, and I think you know quite as well as we do how few actually are successful in that. It's probably only the top 5% of any call who actually get funding. So invariably, the first few times you try and go for Innovate funding, you've got to be prepared to not succeed. I know there are some real experts out there in the market who will help you put Innovate funding together, and I'd have to say I'd highly recommend you took up that expertise, because I think if you try it on your own as a first off attempt, you really are going to struggle. Grants, there's smart funding from Welsh Government. Again, it can be, under normal circumstances, it's quite a long-winded process. It's never quick. We occasionally take on projects on a reduced fee basis we've offered it. It's not very often taken up, but we do occasionally do work where we reduce the fees a little bit in exchange for some sort of equity stake or future earnings. But being a consultancy, that's always going to be a small reduction for a small return, I'd imagine, because we've still got to pay the wages month in, month out. So it's not easy for us to do. But yeah, I mean, there are a couple of, I think GS Verde are on tomorrow. I think they're particularly good at finding funding for companies. So another plug for another MediWales member. But
it's
yeah,
a collaboration conference. The more
yes,
information we
yeah,
can put out there about our
yeah.
networks, the better.
I mean, there are expertise of getting money, and I have to say I'm not one of them. It's
So
a struggle finding money.
absolutely, and so you've briefly touched there on the investment side through the development bank, and obviously there's private equity companies as well. And I think you'll find if you need investment from development bank, they will ask for you to also have private investment involved in that deal, so that they're matching private investment. But what they do have is some real expertise in the sector, in the market. So they've got life science specialists on their team who've been through this and they've done it before. So that really is a benefit of talking to the development bank. Even if it doesn't end up in funding, it can end up in some real expertise as part of those conversations. I would just say that as you've mentioned both Innovate and Welsh Smart Funding.
Yeah.
You can't win both. You can't use them to match each other, but you should consider both. You should look at both. Smart funding is very it's an iterative process. There'll be an innovation specialist alongside you during your development of that application and that process. And to my knowledge, my experience is that if you've missed something out or if you've forgotten something in the application process, then you will be told. So it can take a long time because it can be iterative, but it's it's not a single bite of the cherry. So that's the real benefit there. With Innovate UK, much shorter process, much lighter on the paperwork, but it is a competition. So you fill out the paperwork and you either win or you lose. And if you lose, then there are opportunities to resubmit both to that competition and to other competitions. But yes, it's less iterative. But my advice would be to look at both, and then given that there's a lot of NHS and academic colleagues on the call, it would be good to. Jerome, are you familiar with more the sort of academic and NHS side of the funding landscape, or is that putting you on the spot a bit?
No. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, and this has really brought some, I think, some problems. I mean, showed some problems as well with the funding, because as an academic, and I've worked in fundamental research for a long time as well. And when you submit a grant application, it will be looked at, of course, novelty, and it has to be completely new. I think there is a bit of a problem of finding funding that something. You discover something in a lab and then actually bring it out into an application. So often there are ideas or, I don't know, developments in universities that are not far enough for private funding, so not really to go into industry, but they are not, let's say, novel enough for pure research grants. So I think there is there's a problem there. And I must say, it's the my University of South Wales, they've been very good in helping us basically plugging these gaps as well in terms of funding and helping us as research push us ahead. But of course, this is because COVID-19, everybody was behind this idea. So maybe we had a little bit easier. But it's definitely, as an academic, it's a huge problem trying to bring something that you have in the lab out in the real world, because as a purely academic grant, you can't. It's very difficult to get funding for that kind of type project.
So there is that there's that valley of death between the R&D, prototyping, and creation of the product, and then and then the route to market. And hopefully later on in the week, and in fact the session after this one around value-based procurement, we will be discussing ways of both getting things to market and then accelerating the adoption once we're there. Given that it was an academic institution that initiated the project, Jerome, what's the intellectual property implications of that? Does the university own the IP? Or?
Yeah, basically, I mean, we started working, as an employee of the university, so they own the IP. That's very clear.
Okay, Mark, sorry, you smiled.
Yeah.
Is that possibly reflecting other projects you've worked on where the intellectual property has been a bit more complicated?
Yeah, I mean, it's always complicated with universities and the NHS, where we've had clients who've come in from the NHS and have had disagreements with their departments about who owns the IP. They say, well, I came up with the idea at 9 o'clock on a Friday evening, I wasn't working, therefore it's mine. And the NHS says, well, that doesn't matter, it's still ours. So we see a fair bit of the to and fro between both NHS and universities and academics and health professionals who I've always found it a little bit interesting that you can have an idea, like you said, on a Sunday afternoon while having a cup of coffee in your garden, where you clearly weren't working, but the university or the NHS will still take an interest in it, and the level of that interest is the bit that is always up for some debate and argument, I suppose. So yeah, we see a lot of it. Luckily, it doesn't really affect us too much. It's an argument that takes place away from the product development generally, but yeah, it's and the difference between different health boards and different universities in how they treat it can be quite marked. It's not a level playing field. It kind of depends which health board it is and which university it is.
So there's no top tips there.
No, there's no. Resign. Get the idea started, and then try and get your job back. If I were you, but it's not the only way around it. So
I might suggest just checking out the contractual arrangements that you have in your employment contract and making sure that you're working within your employment contract.
Yeah, it's always been a bit of a maze to get through for academics and NHS staff to understand what their rights are and what the university or the health board actually own. But as Jerome said, in his situation, all the IP belongs to the University of South Wales. So it's I won't say any more. Probably get myself in more trouble than I usually do. So
no, I mean, it is an interesting topic, and I know it's one that the NHS innovation teams are examining at the moment, because although it's complicated in universities, as you and Jerome have mentioned, when it comes to the NHS, they've also got to address these challenges, and having an all Wales approach is the ideal, but even individual health boards, it can be complicated within those. So I think my advice is just check first, and don't go running off thinking that you own intellectual property that you might not. On the other hand, there's usually some way that you can come to an arrangement with the institution. You can always be incentivized, or you can have some ownership, and hopefully that's enough to prompt you to put in all those extra hours, Jerome, and those late nights and reaching those deadlines by working weekends.
No, that's very true. But of course, we also get help from the university in developing the IP. So as a startup, that's not a bad thing. That the IP is owned by a larger institution.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's just starting the discussions early and just be open about it. I think that really helps.
Absolutely, definitely, and most of the institutions do have people who are professional and expertise and have the expertise to have those conversations nowadays,
Exactly.
which is a development over the last few years. So that helps. Mark, you've mentioned a lot of stuff that maybe people coming into this session this morning wouldn't expect their product design consultants to get involved in. You've talked about funding, you've talked about intellectual property, you've talked about the supply chain and potential networks. Is that typical of for your role? Is it considerably wider than just developing a product?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with big corporations, sort of Bayer Diagnostics, British Airways, over the years, developing products for them. And then we've worked with lone inventors, academics, and NHS staff. So you do have to understand where the output is likely to end up. It's easy if you're designing for a big corporation who've got all their manufacturing in place. You basically hand over the data packs at the end, and they go off and get it manufactured, and that's it. But understanding, quantities, who locally. So there is definitely more interest now in keeping things in the UK and in Wales, as was the case with this project. People are definitely starting to try and bring manufacturing back to the UK. So understanding the quantities, which companies are likely to help. We invariably, a lot of the lone inventor type stuff, they're basically trying to get to the point where they can get a patent and maybe a license agreement with a company who might go on and manufacture it. So again, the likes of Axiom are ideal for that type of work. There are a few others. Is TT Electronics. We work with a company in Northern Ireland, which obviously has a little bit of a benefit still being in the single market effectively. So there's a electronics and manufacturing company in Northern Ireland we've worked with on occasion. So yeah, you've got to have much more broad understanding of where things are going. And as we said in the video, the big advantage is the fact that because we work across so many different industries, it's quite often easy to transfer knowledge from one industry to another that wouldn't normally happen. And the other big advantage is generally, as with this product, everything was done in-house. All the design work, the app development, the mechanical design, the electronics, and the software, the embedded software, was all done in-house. It was a smallish team of 5. Should probably give them a shout out. So we had Andrew Seddon on mechanical and Richard Bevender doing the electronics, Sam Pearson on software, and that core team, supported by Gary and Jeremy, who are my co-directors. I mean, basically, they just concentrated on that job from May until almost December, mainly because of COVID. So we had, well, obviously, like every company, we had sort of staff furloughed at times when they were brought back specifically to work on this project. So it was it meant they could focus on it, get it done quicker. But yeah, you've got to understand manufacturing capabilities here and overseas. You've got to understand a bit about the finance, although, like I said, it is a bit of a black hole at times trying to find money. But yeah, it's a broad knowledge across the company of everything required to get a product from a piece of paper or an idea in someone's head into manufacturing. It can be a painful process at times, but yeah, it's very rewarding seeing the product reach the market at the end.
Absolutely. Would you like to add to that, Jerome?
I think you said Max said everything, but it's yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, and for us, the conversation that we could have with GX, with Mark, with his team, but also with UPG, with Biomont, I think it's another it's an advantage of being local. I think it's because it takes a lot of thinking and work to pull it all together. So to be able to, and to be honest, I needed to be educated as well, because I'm an academic, and going into production and design and development, it was new for us as well. So it really helps to have people there that you can talk to.
Absolutely. So Mark, you alluded to the B word there. So have there been any specific challenges due to the post-Brexit environment that in terms of regulation and certification?
Regulation and certification is still unfolding, I think, to a certain extent. I believe it's the end of this year that the CE marking is going to change. I think the biggest impact we've seen is in transportation of goods. So we do get stuff made in China occasionally, where deliveries are being held up. We've had stuff stuck in Hong Kong airport for 6 days, which was unheard of. But there's obviously the COVID epidemic has had an impact on transportation. Brexit's had an impact on goods coming into the UK. So you're seeing delays right down the supply chain now. Which one's causing the more trouble, COVID or Brexit? I'm not entirely convinced. I have a feeling in UK ports it's Brexit, and internationally it's COVID. So if you can get stuff into the UK and it sits in customs for days, that's almost certainly just because of the build up of goods inspections caused by Brexit. But I don't think it's going to improve anytime soon. And of course, the UK government has now decided to put off checks of goods coming into the UK for another 12 months. So it means we won't be short of food, but in the short term. But obviously, those checks will have to come in at some point. Otherwise, our farmers are going to be a little upset about the fact that their stuff is being checked and costs are being added to their outward going goods. So yeah, it's still unfolding, isn't it? Brexit as a problem. I mean, certainly costs are going up, and like I said, transportation is slowing down. So all of those things will lead to higher costs for product development and manufacturing, which again maybe is why people are trying to stay more local at the moment.
Absolutely. So Jerome, 2 more questions to you. First one is where now? You've got a product. You're about to be CE marked, or UKCA marked, or whatever it is when that hits the ground. Then where do you go from there? Is it an exit, or do you see yourself as running a manufacturing company?
Well, in a way, we are. Of course, we are the manufacturer of a diagnostic test. But in a way, we're also kind of virtual, aren't we? Because Axiom is producing the various UPTs, the swabs, and Biomont the assays. So we bring it all together. So we are definitely now, getting into sales and the marketing. So we will, we will take orders soon, and we'll start production for sure. I mean, it's a shame that I can't. Going back to the B word, Brexit, of course, the regulatory issues are, of course, are more difficult. We can't simply sell our device in Europe just like that. So it made it much more complicated. And
so, would you do it again? Would you, if you knew everything you know now, would you do this again? In fact, will you do it again?
I think no. I would. I really. I won't lie to you. I mean, it's been a really tough year. We worked incredibly hard, everyone, but it's been really, really good. It's good. I think I am almost started off with a kind of naivety. Saying, well, let's get this done, right? And of course, everybody warned me that it's going to be tough, and it was very tough. But also, it's I think it's a really positive story that you can achieve so much. So definitely, I would do it again. And I think also, I mean, we started really trying to help people because it was really dire. Remember, this time last year, we were working in a lab and think, well, we can make a positive change. So that was really always the driver for us to do this.
Well, hopefully we won't. Whether you do it again or not, it wouldn't be under the same, the same imperative. It would be more in a doing things better and improving the situation for everybody. So I'm sure there's 30 people online who are waiting for me to ask this last question before we go, Jerome. Is that street view behind you? Is that a specific street, or is that is it imaginary?
It is my what's our Lego street, actually, Lego houses, and they remind me of the houses back in Holland, where I'm from.
Okay, because I was thinking it looks fairly a lot like a Valley's high street, so I couldn't be more wrong there.
But there's three stories, so.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm going to bring it to an end there. This has been an incredibly interesting examination in detail of a new product development case study, a collaboration between university and manufacturers across Wales, the expertise coming from Mark's team in new product development, some funding from Welsh Government, and some clinical and laboratory expertise coming from the NHS. So couldn't be a better case study. Really appreciate you spending your time this morning sharing it with us, and I'm going to close there and say thank you very much.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Lucerne Scientific, a spin-out from the University of South Wales, has developed an affordable, rapid diagnostic point-of-care platform to detect COVID-19 within 30 minutes. Requiring minimal user training and no need for a lab, the testing platform has the potential to be truly transformative. Lucerne has formed strong links with the Welsh industry and the health service, ensuring a robust local supply chain with rapid scale-up capabilities. Lucerne has partnered with GX Group, Biomond, Axiom, and UPG, as well as Public Health Wales, NHS Health Boards, and Welsh Government to develop this diagnostic platform to meet urgent global needs. The technology can also be adapted to meet further health challenges in the future.
So thank you very much, everybody who's joined us for this first session, a real scene setter for the for the remainder of the day. And I'm going to close this session now, but we're going to be back in 30 minutes. We have a workshop on the challenge and opportunities of applying a value-based approach to procurement and commissioning. That'll be led by Adele Cahill, so you won't be listening so much to me, but I'll be there to welcome Adele. And Adele has brought the value-based healthcare and value-based procurement teams across Wales to provide that presentation. So definitely one that I know a lot of people are looking forward to. And we will see you in around 30 minutes. Thank you.